YouTubers, and welcome to Big Buddha is Watching. I'm Big Buddha, and today I'm going to be looking at the 1952 British comedy The Card. This film was made by the Rank organisation, but if I was to describe it, it would very much be in the vein of the Ealing comedies of the time, sort of soft, whimsical tale, but admittedly very funny in places. This film, I should iterate, is a subscriber request from a new subscriber, a Mr. Stan Wiz, if that is your real name. He requested it because apparently his friend is an extra in this film. It was filmed around the Stoke area. His friend apparently played one of the street urchins in one of the scenes for £0.50 a day. I was unfamiliar with this film. It's called The Card, but in America it was known as The Promoter. It's called The Card because it's the British slang term, oh, he's a card, which very much describes the character that Alec Guinness plays in the film. He's from working class origins, but he's attempting to better himself in the narrative of the film. And Guinness plays the character Denry brilliantly down to a T. So the plot is a rags to riches tale. You follow Denry, you see him in the first scene, he's at school, and you get the impression that he's a character who's always been intent on bettering himself by any means possible. The very first scene of him is as a boy, and you see him sneaking into his classroom and doctoring his marks to make him look a better student. This leads him on to being transferred to a school for young gentlemen, and the film follows him from there on. He goes to work as a solicitor's clerk, and from there he has an encounter with the Countess.
Now it's about the invitations for the municipal ball.
Oh, yes.
This is my list. He isn't to take any notice of the crossings out. You understand?
Yes.
His official list of all the aldermen and councillors should be added to this.
Added to this.
And I want all the invitations out by Wednesday at the latest.
Wednesday at the latest.
Thank you. Good day.
And manages to wheedle himself an invitation to the ball. He then rallies the whole community together around him to pass himself off as a gentleman. He gets dance lessons from Glynis Johns, who many will know best probably as the mother in Mary Poppins. But she was one of our great theatre actresses, as indeed was Guinness. He was one of our leading theatre actors at the time. He winds up courting Glynis Johns' character after she tries to abscond for non-payment of rent to him and winds up in the canal.
Oh, I see. Doing a moonlight flit, eh? You've got a nerve.
I don't know what you mean. I was helping a friend.
A friend? That's your table you're sitting on there. The same one that had the little box with the lock that doesn't work. I'd have looked a prize chump going up to an empty house for tea tomorrow, wouldn't I? And all that talk about Calvert insulting you. Well, it's bailiffs for you this time, Miss Hurt, and make no mistake about it. Bailiffs.
I say, it's not as bad as that. It isn't, really.
They go on holiday together, but he starts to get annoyed at her constant spending of his money.
They're 35 shillings each. I'll just make a note of where to send it. What name?
Rockefeller. Buckingham Palace.
Henry, what an awful thing to say.
I only said Rockefeller. Can't a chap say Rockefeller?
No, he can't. Ruth.
She, like him, wants to better herself, but she's very much a money-driven character and a materialistic character. Later on in the film, he starts to rally the community more. He gets the greatest footballer in the land, who's a native of Bursley, where the film is set. Bursley is actually a fictional town, but it's based, I gather, like a lot of Arnold Bennett's work, on the town of Burslem, which makes up part of Stoke-on-Trent these days. And the film culminates with him being elected local mayor, and one of the characters asking,
"What great cause has he ever been identified with?"
I think I can tell you that, Mr. Duncalf. It's quite simple. He's identified with the great cause of cheering us all up.
Which I think describes this film down to a T. Its main function is to cheer people up, I guess. It's based on the 1911 novel The Card by the British satirist Arnold Bennett. So here you have a film that was based on a work that was written 40 years prior to the film being made. And I guess a lot of the things in the film would have pertained more to Britain around the turn of the century rather than the 50s. It's very much a look at the British way of life and a look at many of the elements that make up Britain. I mean, some of the things in it seem archaic now, and I can quite imagine they may have even seen archaic back in 1952. There's a scene where Denry is invited to a countess's ball. I mean, do we still have countesses? Do we still have the local count who runs the entire community? Maybe here and there, but it's certainly not common now, and I don't even know if it was that common in 1952, but I will imagine it being a common thing in 1911 when the book was written. So like I said, the film encompasses many facets of the British way of life. It's set in a working class town. You have the local countess, solicitors, tailors, homegrown businesses, seaside holidays, football and local politics. It's all encompassed in there. But anchoring the film at the centre is an absolutely brilliant performance by Alec Guinness, one of many that he gave at the time. His performance is, as you'd expect from such a superb actor, which is what he was, is very, very funny and kind of a caricature, but a really, really well done one, a really well thought through one. You can hear he's really considered the accent. There are common overtones in his accent and common turns of phrase that he uses.
What's happened? I've had an invitation to a dance.
Who from?
The Countess of Chell.
You can tell that the character is trying to better himself. He is trying to speak with a better accent.
As a matter of fact, it's the first time I've ever danced in my life. Except at Miss Earps, you know.
Steve.
She says it's the same in dancing as it is in life. It's the woman's duty to adapt herself to the man.
Does she? That's the most interesting thought.
I like that, even in comedies. I like really well thought through, really well considered comedic performances from proper actors. Of course, one of my favourite performances in any film is Robert De Niro in The King of Comedy, and there's a comedic performance where you can see that every element is being thought through, and the same is true of Guinness in this film. It's a shame now that I think Alec Guinness is probably best known really as Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, and for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I say a shame, not that he's not good in those films and that TV show. He's great, but by that stage in his career, he was a serious dramatic actor, and a lot of people forget now what a brilliant comedic talent he was in the 40s and the 50s on the stage and screen. He was the Steve Coogan of his day, and he was a contemporary of Peter Sellers. He was the Peter Sellers a decade before Peter Sellers. He could pretty much play anything, but in his early career, what he was playing was caricature. I think later on in his career, he started to give more mature performances, obviously because he was a more mature man, but more well-rounded screen performances. Obi-Wan Kenobi, despite its arguably two-dimensional writing, it is a fully realised character. It's a three-dimensional character. The same, of course, is true of his work in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Whereas his work as a young man, although arguably more entertaining, it is a little more two-dimensional. He's poking fun at archetypes as opposed to living and breathing them, which is, I think, the sign of the more mature actor. And the way that a lot of character actors go, actually, especially comedic character actors. Guinness is great in this. In fact, he's the reason to watch the film. I think it was the reason the film resonated with me the other night when I watched it. And of course, Glynis Johns is great. Again, Glynis Johns is another great talent. I haven't seen her in a hell of a lot. Like I say, I know her most for Mary Poppins, but she's very, very entertaining in that, of course, and very cute and with a very distinctive voice. And she's hysterically funny.
Very well. I suppose I shall have to give in. I'll write to you tonight.
With the money? You could give it me now, really, couldn't you?
Yes, I could. And to make you thoroughly ashamed of yourself, I shall give you some tea as well.
Oh, there's no need.
Oh, but there is. I insist.
This film has quite a few very funny female performances in this.
I've got something on my mind.
You better have a dose of castor oil.
My dear madam, will you...
Entitle me to the elementary courtesies, I was about to say, when you interrupted me.
If it's French you want, I've now for you.
Come now, Mrs. Hollins, that won't do.
I'll have it right in a brace of shakes, my lady.
Well, how long is a brace of shakes?
About 20 minutes, my lady.
It's too long.
Yes, my lady.
Which is refreshing to see. But Glynis Johns is very, very funny in this and entertaining. In the plot of the film, of course, there's a sort of burgeoning romance between her and Guinness. And in the end, he doesn't end up with Johns. He ends up with Petula Clark.
What are you going to do with me?
Do with you? Marry you, of course. What do you think?
Marry me?
If you'll have me.
And this was one of the points that I didn't really engage with the film, because I wanted him to end up with Johns, actually, just because she was the more charismatic screen presence. I think the 11th hour romance he has with Petula Clark at the end of the film comes out of left field. Petula Clark is such a dull character. I hadn't really registered her as being of any importance in the film. I wasn't really sure why she was in many of the scenes she was in. Of course, it comes apparent at the end because Guinness's character ends up with her. So that's a shame. From what I understand, this film sticks very closely to the source material, so I imagine maybe in the source material that character's more three-dimensionally fleshed out. It's just a shame she was played by kind of a damp squid of an actress. Rags to Riches tales are often in British fiction played as comedic fantasy. It occurred to me the other night that this is more a British thing rather than an American thing, and I put that down to the fact that in America the perception is that the Rags to Riches tale isn't a fantasy, it's a reality, it's the American dream, it's what everyone aspires to better themselves, or at least make a lot of money in America. And so the American standard story tends to be more of a look at the dark side of the American dream, if you like. Stories like Death of a Salesman, The Great Gatsby, The Godfather. I guess the difference between those stories and this one is you see the downfall in the third act in American stories, whereas in this film you don't really. The character starts off from humble beginnings and ends up mayor of the town, and that's where the story ends. It's kind of the first 100 pages of Les Miserables, just condensed and with jokes peppered throughout. So the film is slight and whimsical, as you would expect from a British comedy of the time, though it is still very funny in places. It still made me laugh, and it is, I do have to say, elevated greatly by Guinness's performance. I think anybody else in that role wouldn't quite have reached the comedic heights that Guinness reaches in this. He's just a joy to watch in every single scene, and he pretty much is in every single scene. He always finds something fresh and funny and well considered to do. And to be honest, I'm probably going to give this film an elevated star rating of an extra star, maybe even a star and a half, thanks to Guinness alone. He really is that good in the film. So there you go. That's just a few quick thoughts on The Card, a film, like I say, I was not familiar with, but Dan Wiz, if that is your real name, requested it and I checked it out, and I'm very glad I did so. I very much enjoyed the film, so thanks for recommending it. And as I've said before, anybody who wants a review, if you're a new subscriber to the channel, just name a film and I'll do a quick review for you, but you do have to hit that subscribe button, I'm afraid. So, thanks for joining me, folks. This is me, Big Buddha, signing off, and I shall see everyone out there in YouTube land.